minds in droves about Axiom, the company that holds the magical keys of cryptology that control the internet. So, Michael, welcome to the show.
Hi, Douglas. Great to be with you this afternoon.
It is so difficult following what you are coordinating and sending to us from all of your researchers. Every day, it's a task to look at it and research it and then try to grok it, try to understand it, because it seems to me that this is just crazyville. I'm going to ask you a question that one of our viewers asked, and that is something like this. What if when Hillary moved Axiom over to Shanghai, hiding it under different names, AMS and what's the another company, but when she did that,
IPG, I think, is another acronym they're using.
Yes, IPG, AMS and IPG. They always love the acronyms, so you can't follow their names. And then, of course, we know Shanghai is the biggest crooked place in the world for anything. So the reader said, can't we just turn her off and her ability to tax the internet? I would give the answer, and please correct it when I'm done, that no, she's just going to collect the taxes no matter where she's at. She doesn't care about the hardware. She just is getting the taxes. And everybody has agreed to pay those taxes so that they can have secure, certified communications on the internet. So it seems to me like it's just a floating tax, and it doesn't matter where she's at. All they need is an office to collect the money. But you also have made contact with someone who was at Axiom, worked for them, and so you got a little inside insight, and then you went off and found more stuff about Axiom that just makes them a shockingly powerful company that nobody knows exists, that gets a tax on everything on the internet. So if anybody controls the internet or owns the internet, it would be the people who tax it. And so can you tell us about what you found out from the insider and what you found out about further research into Axiom and Hillary Clinton's magical crypto keys?
Yeah, one of the things you have to realize when you're dealing with technology is the systems that are working now and they're not crashing all the time have been debugged. And one of the things you have to be careful of when you start making a bunch of changes is destabilizing the whole internet by making any change. So the short answer is it's just engineering, so it can be changed. The pragmatic issue is you've got to do it in such a way that it doesn't destabilize what is working now. And so the plan that has to be developed with honest brokers, with moral people, with people who believe in the Bill of Rights, to get them together in a room, because it's a multi-dimensional engineering task to make these changes. And so you have to do it with highly experienced people who have our best interests in mind, and then you figure out how best to do that so you don't destabilize the whole network. And so and again, it's just engineering. It's a lot of engineering and can be done, but you've got to have the right people. So the short answer is, yeah, the easiest way to stop collecting funds is just to set the billable amount to zero. So you leave the current accounting system that they're using alone, and you just don't charge anybody for the services. And then you've got to look at managing the system in a way that is sustainable as you go forward, because these are all mechanisms that require care and feeding. I mean, computers just don't sit there and hum. As anybody who has a PC knows, they tend to deteriorate over time just by age. And so you've got to always be paying attention to this technology in order to keep it current.
Well,
I don't know if that made sense.
Oh, absolutely. And it seems to me that Hillary's not only taxing everything, she can access things, and her people, let's just say the same cabal down there at Rose Law Firm. We're so tired of making the list of the same people. They're the same people in D.C. right now who are still lying and cheating and controlling and fixing and creating.
Well, there you cut off the admin access to the back ends. So you can start turning things off and revoking keys and changing passwords and taking steps back away from the edge of the cliff where we are now. and that's what you have to do to keep the system moving while it's kind of like you're fixing the ship while you're still sailing it.
Absolutely, and she's taking advantage of the internet as it is developing as a psyops weaponized tool of the military. But she saw from the beginning, Hillary, Bill, Chandler, Rosenstein, Mueller, Comey, the whole gang saw from the beginning that this wasn't only just a way to surveil, to identify and attack, but they also found that it was a way to tax. Right. And then I think that they found what Eric Schmidt wants, which is to gather up all the data that you can in this data mining and in this data brokering. And what we now know for $5.43, your entire profile is sold from Facebook to anybody who requests it, anyone at any time, and that anyone can get this. So this was kind of a specialized form of it, because Facebook was then going to suck up all your secret information, your conversations, and Gmail, we now know 100 different companies access your very emails, all of them. Yep, folks, all of them. And then what are they doing? They're data mining. And why? Because this data mining, this data brokering can identify you as a financially vulnerable person that they can then, as they're analyzing all your data, including your Google requests, your questions, your queries, everywhere you've been. And now that we have these fantastic breaches of data from places like Equifax, where all of your credit information, all of your sensitive financial information, 143 million Americans stolen at one time.
You believe those are breaches? No way.
No way. That's where I'm headed with this. It's going into your digital prison box.
Well, just think about how stupid that idea is. So let's say you've got 500 million users data breach. Do you realize how long it would take a computer to dump out that much information? And what was happening during this time? Were all the network engineers who were monitoring this asleep or drugged? No, that's not what happened. It's an excuse to give data to this black box and have deniability.
Oh, absolutely. And Hillary has the crypto keys. So she can go in, see the data that she wants, and say to anyone she wants, I don't have to pay for it. You're going to pay me for it. So I'm going to take 143 million people's credit reports from Equifax, and I'm going to steal it, and I'm going to put it in to what was the U.S. Digital Service created by Obama during his administration, which basically digitized everything. It turned it into e-government and all these ID verification systems. Well, all of those things. Well, also notice that when Equifax supposedly got hacked, which it didn't, it got breached, as you just pointed out, they could get breached by Hillary simply dropping the certification for a moment and using those crypto keys to go in and just spend however many weeks it takes letting that data flow out into her system, which then she sells to who? That would be Alphabet, Eric Schmidt's Alphabet, which is going to take over for Google, because Google's going to go down probably very soon. And when Facebook goes down, don't worry, they have another one set up for it. And Sir Timothy Berners-Lee says there's going to be a whole new internet, so don't worry. He's going to change that maybe in the next couple weeks. Don't you worry about a thing.
Yeah.
And the Chinese and their Dragonfly credit system, don't worry about that. Just because 500,000 Muslims were arrested because of the look on their face once Eric Schmidt got the facial recognition to work in Dragonfly. And it's a lie that Dragonfly isn't operative in China. That's a big fat friggin' lie, because they put 1 million Muslims in jail. 500,000 of them died either in jail during their re-education or immediately thereafter from starvation and other because of the way they were treated. That's the tip of the iceberg, folks. That's what we know. That's only in one region of China. They're arresting people left and right. People are coming up missing. Why?
Well,
Eric Schmidt.
Let me read you something. A Senate report was prepared at the end of 2013 on data aggregators or data brokers and what they were doing. And one of the first things in this report that just emerged into our attention yesterday or today is that they're trying to identify what it is that these data brokers are selling to commercial entities and to the government. And so they actually were able to identify categories that this data was helping these various purchasers to create. And let me just read you some of the categories, and then I'm going to ask you what kinds of voters these people become. So here's a list. Burdened by debt, singles. Midlife strugglers, families. Resilient renters, very Spartan. Extra needy. Zero mobility. Hard times. Enduring hardships. Humble beginnings. Now they're actually created. They've created these as categories. Struggling elders, singles. Retiring on empty, singles. Tough start, young single parents. Living on loans, young urban single parents. Credit crunched city families. Meager metro means. That's an actual category. Relying on aid, retired singles. Rough retirement, small town and rural seniors. Financial challenges, credit reliance. Rocky road, very elderly. Rolling the dice. Fragile families, small town shallow pockets. Ethnic second city strugglers. Rural and barely making it. Now, what kind of categories are these for responsible citizens? What are they trying to do with these categories, Douglas? I'm asking you.
Well, they're figuring out their vulnerabilities so that they can take advantage of them, and these are the very categories that Hillary put into her new specialized voting election rigging software that was on the Democratic National Committee server that she never wanted anyone to see. But we know that she was targeting them because we know...
So all they have to do then is go into one of those categories, figure out their 2 or 3 top hot buttons, and those magically then become the dog whistles for the nightly news. That's what's going on here.
Absolutely. And then they create narratives and virtue signaling that appeal to those vulnerable people, and they economically attack them by promising things that they cannot deliver.
Right.
And people are so naive that between election to election, they forget that the Democrats they never, ever follow through on any of that. And as a matter of fact, what they usually say is the opposite of what they do. So what you're pointing out here is that Axiom is one of these giant companies, one of the biggest ones, getting information.
Probably the biggest one.
Mm-hmm. And using it
Experian.
Not only to sell for commercial purposes, but to manipulate for political purposes, economic purposes, cultural purposes. Wow, that's scary.
Now let me read you the conclusion of this Senate report. And this is a pattern. What they do is they listen to what conservatives, how conservatives are concerned about this kind of data collection. So then they go through the motions of collecting data about those concerned and then read this conclusion. Consumers going about their daily activities should expect that they are generating data. Consumers going about their daily activities should expect that they are generating data that may well end up in the hands of data brokers. They should expect that this data may well be amassed for many other details about them data brokers already have compiled.
Surveil, target,
so they're telling us, hey, good luck, folks. Here's all the ways you're going to get monitored, and you should expect it.
It's already happened in China. It's happening in the European Union. It's happening in Britain. It's happening here. Apple already has a score that they create for you. And I assume then that Facebook already has one, and Google and Gmail.
This report actually identified the social score in the report as the next big step. This was in 2013.
And then we see that Eric Schmidt is controlling the news through the U.S. digital news system that he's just incorporated in all the mainstream media. We see that George Soros and the Atlantic Council is using their the same mechanisms that they use for basically being a truth ministry in Europe. And you can see George Soros in Britain right now basically breaking the back of the Brexit vote. And they're going to have another vote, folks, because George Soros is going to win because he is taking down Theresa May. And it's nothing new. It's what he's done in at least 14 other countries. He's still trying to do it here in America, as they call it the palace coup, or the soft coup, the coup d'etat, which I don't think is soft at all, is still going on. And Robert Mueller has carried on John Brennan's illegal counterintelligence black ops operation against Trump, both as a candidate and as a president. This is the same exact scenario. It's using data for warfare. And we, as Americans, we don't really care as long as we get faster service and I can access Wikipedia quicker so I can do my research. And I really don't care if they get to my bank account because I don't have any money anyway. That kind of attitude is basically going to lead us right off a cliff into the digital prison that we have been predicting now for about 2 years.
Right. Yep.
And Hillary's right there. It always has been, continues, and it will go to the aggressive remote control Internet of Things. And folks, you're a thing to them. You are just wet works. You're just a biological column for them to put chips into so that they can remote control you. That is the way that Hillary and her buddies, Richard C. Walker, and the people involved in the IBM Eclipse Foundation, that's the way they think of you. There's too many of us on this planet, and for the top people, they need to get rid of us and have more centralized control. So Sir Timothy Berners-Lee's, I don't believe that there's such a thing as decentralized internet. Never has been, and you're not going to invent it now. And remember, that's what you told us to begin with. So Hillary and Axiom and AMS, and what's the other one? IPG?
IPG.
And the Chinese in Shanghai, which would be then Eric Schmidt and James Breyer. And the rest of you people who believe that China is going to lead us into the future, you're going off a cliff. So have fun with that. And we're not going to accept your Dragonfly program. We're not going to accept our free speech being taken from us because we're Americans and we will fight for our constitutional republic.
Well, Axiom is is clearly. You still there?
Yes.
Axiom is clearly the lead dog in this big data charge, and they've been allowed to collect all this data by a complicit, in my mind, a complicit Senate, a complicit House, a complicit Securities and Exchange Commission, Federal Trade Commission, Department of Justice, FBI. All these people have either participated in it or turned a blind eye. And what we have to do as citizens is storm the gates in all of these, with all these agencies, and demand for them to come clean on these activities.
And Trump could sign the Miller Act and get the dominoes falling and start to get the military out of the internet and the military out of our private lives. There is no reason for them to be there. And Trump has now changed the National Defense Authorization Act. People don't understand that what they're doing, they're not going to get caught for, just like China just got caught for meddling in our midterm election. And so there will be repercussions, not only to China, but to anyone who does business with China, because Trump has already identified this. And because of the crybaby Democrats crying and crying that somehow Trump meddled in the election with the Russians, it's now being found out that it's the exact opposite. And so this election actually may be one of the first that is going more towards honesty and real election results instead of just the manipulation of our election through the software called Optech, which you and the Americans for Innovation and other researchers that you're working with have brought to our attention, and we have brought it with your help to the world. We should end all digital control over our elections. We should end all surveillance of Americans completely, and these companies that, though we sign user agreements that say that we allow them to take our data, manipulate it, or do things with it, we don't say that we allow them to use it against us. And
Right.
this is an attack
Let me
against
read
us.
let me read you this summary of Axiom at the beginning of this one report. Axiom was founded in the United States in the 1960s and began work on providing a list of electoral postal addresses. Notice electoral. Now it is one of the companies with the largest personal information in the world, mainly selling and consulting private information data to multinational global companies. What else do you need to know?
Hillary rigged the elections for her husband. It's very clear, isn't it? And of course, Hillary knows all about Optech because she has her friends like Mitt Romney buying into. He has 17 states that his election digital machine counters and his son Tag run, as well as George Soros owns some and Lord Malik Brown owns some of the machines. But that doesn't matter because Optech is ran by the rogue CIA, who determines what the election will be, because we now know that through Optech, anybody can actually hack any one of those machines from their cell phone just by walking past one of them. And this has been demonstrated again and again at DEF CON and many other places. So what we're saying is digital control, central control, the internet, these are weapons being used against us, and we need to realize this is the battlefield, and the battlefield is raging with a war. And so, Michael, we always thank you and we turn to you whenever we need help with this, because it was your trade secrets that were stolen and manipulated to turn it into a police state instead of what should have been the true idea of the internet, which was freedom through information, and information that provides knowledge that can free us instead of bind us and put us into these digital prisons. So I'd like to apologize to you that, the 7 deadly sins have taken over the people who stole your trade secrets. Thank you again for your revelations on these things, and keep up the good work on Axiom. We're going to keep pounding on them until we perhaps can show President Trump that he is in control of the internet, and he can turn it off if he wants, and he can stop the surveillance. And we believe that behind the scenes he is working on these things. We see many things, much evidence, the references to antitrust, to monopolies, to looking into the corruption, being called before the Congress to have to testify on these matters. There are things that are moving forward with Trump that I do hope will someday in the very near future basically burst the bubble of the myth of a Sir Timothy Berners-Lee and his nonsense weaponized World Wide Web, and turn it back into something that it should be, which is a true expansion of human knowledge based upon wisdom and love